Start off by saying congratulations on this album. I've been listening to it all day and it's an absolutely amazing album, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we're extremely proud, obviously, and it's exciting times. Thank you.
I guess the first thing a lot of people are going to pick up with this album is there's a fair bit of aggression with this album. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what your goals were with this album and where you feel that aggression came from.
Well, music. I think I usually dig from the same depths as I always do when I write. It's like my upbringing is the classic rock meets the death metal, so it's it will be Maiden-esque harmonies in there, and there will be kick drums a la Death or Malevolent Creation in there, and it's always been sort of that contrast that's been driving me at least, and I think in general In Flames is about that aggression meets the melancholic melodies and beauty meets a beast in a way, and I think that's what intrigued me always, and I think so from that point of view, we didn't really change that much, and we weren't really in a hurry to make a record either because we were still touring I the Mask, and that touring got cut off because of the pandemic.
Yep.
So we started touring there. So we weren't really planning on making a record. So I didn't really think about any aggression. Obviously, everybody was frustrated about the situation, and it's been really tough times for a lot of people during the pandemic. So that probably trickled into it. But at the time, I was just happy to be seeing everybody in the band again, seeing the producers, being able to do what I love again. So I didn't really sense any of that aggression. But I think what really happened was that we decided to have a production leaning towards metal and death metal a bit more. So the actual sounds of the drums and the guitars, they are leaning towards the metal side more than even the Mask, which is kind of, it's very guitar oriented or guitar heavy, but it's leaning towards rock more, and we wanted to lean towards the death metal, and I think that just shown a new light on the riffs and melodies that just gives it that aggressive touch, I guess.
Yeah, was there a reason why you wanted to lean towards the death metal on this album? Was it something that you talked about, or did it just naturally happen?
No, it's something we talked about. I mean, we've done so many records, and it's always fun and interesting to like have a plan, but you never stick to it, So what happens usually is that we try to distill it down to a few words that are important for the album, and we wanted this to be big, and we wanted it to be heavy and maybe not as organic as previous albums. So and Joe, who was mixing the album, he played drums for us and on records, and he's been part of the band for a long time. So he knew us really well, knows us really well, and understood really well what we were talking about. And together we managed to make, I mean, he made a killer mix of the riffs and melodies that we created. So it's just a great combination.
Definitely. You mentioned before that you weren't actually planning on making an album at this time. What sparked the songwriting process off for this album if it wasn't a time to start making an album?
For me, songwriting, it's kind of either or. Either I write or we're on tour. I don't do both at the same time. A lot of people are good at that. I'm not. I tend to focus on one or the other. And I couldn't really see any live shows during the pandemic, so I wasn't at all interested in writing. I wasn't inspired at all. All I want to do is be on stage, play these songs, and the writing process is fun, but actual studio time, I've never found that fun. It's very tedious, and it kind of takes away from creativity a lot of times, and it's more mechanic, more of a job if you want. And and that's the whole point of being in a band. You don't want to have a job.
Yeah.
So the whole experience is not super fun. But it's kind of worth it because I get to play the songs live. It's a means to an end in a way, But towards the end of the pandemic, we could see tours happening. There was a huge festival, I think, in New Zealand, and there was tours happening, shows and stuff happening in the US. Nothing really happening in Europe yet, but at least it was the light at the end of the tunnel, So that kind of made me okay with the idea to start writing, even though we weren't done with I the Mask. We just barely started touring on that one. But Anders was, I think he was really pushing it because he felt like this was a good time. And he convinced me to fly over to the US, and we had a great time and created the embryos for the Forgone album. We did that as soon as we could get into the US and go to LA, where we usually go for writing sessions and recordings nowadays. And it was fantastic to meet up with him and the rest of the guys and start creating. So it was. It was kind of spontaneous and kind of, in a way, seeing the possibilities after the pandemic. Because I felt the first 3-4 months, I felt useless. I felt like everything I'm doing, all I've done, is pointless at this time. I can't do any of it.
Yeah.
And it was really frustrating. So it was a really, really good time. It was a really good experience, and exactly what we needed, I think. And it gave us a lot of ammunition, for touring later on. We were still touring I the Mask, but we could throw in a new song or two, and then that's just super exciting for us and hopefully for the people listening to us as well.
Yeah, you talked about that frustration there in the first 3 or 4 months, and this album talks about and looks at lost time. Was it from that frustration that lost time came from, or what was the lost time that you were talking about with this album?
I think in general the concept behind it, lyric wise, is about time, and it's about the end time, or basically the end of everything as we know it, and how that would affect persons and also in general society and everything. We're not a political band, and we're not a religious or anything like that in our music. But some things you just can't avoid or ignore, and a huge pandemic and the follow-up crazy stuff happening in Europe obviously has an impact on the songwriting. And I think these are observations, as always with Anders, of his surroundings, experiences that he had, and also thinking about like putting yourself in different situations and how that would affect you. And I think that's one of the beauties with the way he writes lyrics, because it's, for him, I think it's very obvious what he's talking about, and he's got a clear vision of what he wants to say, but he never really tells anybody exactly what it is. So the way you have to interpret it is by putting your own experiences in there, or like building your own picture, and it creates such a deeper bond with the lyrics, I think, for the listener. And I always liked that. But in general, it is about time and about the end time.
You and him have such an amazing songwriting relationship. It's like a Lennon-McCartney kind of relationship. How do you find that relationship, and how do you find that songwriting process working with him?
It's something that's taken a lot of time to figure out, like what's the best way for us to work together. And it's not necessarily just us two, but it's been that way the last couple of albums, because it's been working so good that we don't want to change things up, or we don't need to change things up. We've done so many records in so many different ways with so many different producers, so many different members, songwriters, everything. So we've tried a lot of stuff, and each and every experience has been very important to bring us to where we are today. And all the live shows, everything has taught us what's doable live and not. And again, back to the fact that I love being on stage. That's where the songs are going to spend the most time for us.
Yeah.
And also that's important too when you write. So it's we just figured out a way of working together. We try to be really open and try to listen to each other's ideas and suggestions and critique in a good way, and that's as far as we can take it, I think, because I'm not very good at compromising when it comes to the music. I know I'm going to play these songs so many times live that I need to love each and every part of it. So I'm very picky when it comes to that. But together we found a way of doing it that works really, really well for us. And it's almost like the whole session from starting writing until ending up with a mastered record is just one long process. It's not divided into writing and then studio and then mastering. I mean, mastering obviously comes last, but the whole point is that the whole writing session turns into, at some point without us knowing about it, the recording of the album, and the writing just continues almost all the way up until the last couple of days of studio time. So it's a very, very cool way of doing it. And we really love that, because you can be creative all the way until the end. And that's the fun part of making a record.
Definitely. You also mentioned there as well about working with different people. This is the first album where you've worked with Chris Broderick coming in to help out with guitars as well. Tell us a little bit about how that relationship with Chris started off for the band, and what he was like to work with on this album.
Well, we've known Chris for over 20 years. I mean, the first couple of tours we did over in the US, he was playing with Jack Panzer. We were touring, I think it was with Iced Earth at the time. So we got to know him then. He was the guy that was never drinking. He was always working out, and he was playing guitar 8 hours a day, 20 years ago already. So, and he was an extremely lovable dude, always friendly, always had, good things to say about your music, and always having a good time. He's always been a super guy. And then later on, obviously, he was with Nevermore, so we toured again. And then later on, he was with Megadeth, and we toured again. So, I mean, we've known the guy for a very, very long time. So when his name popped up when we were in need and search of a guitar player, we were so happy that he was available and he wanted to do that particular tour at the time. And then later on, we just felt that this works so well, so let's continue doing this. And when he came in, he didn't do any of the songwriting, because that was fairly, I mean, as I mentioned before, we found a way of writing that we really like. But his guitar playing is very much on the record through his solos. And I asked him early on if he wanted to lay down a solo or two, and he was very happy to do that. And I was extremely happy that he wanted to do that, because he's such a guitar player, of course. So, and that obviously, adds a lot of flavor to the songs, and his crisp guitar playing, super shreddy but really tasty at the same time. His absolute control over the guitar, it just shines through, and it was an absolute pleasure. I got to record it myself too. It felt really good.
Wow,
actually, so I'm very proud of that. Yeah, and it was just a fun part. I mean, he's a great dude, and he adds a lot of great vibes to the whole camp. He's done this forever, just as we have, so there's no drama or anything. It just works really well with the rest of the guys.
Yeah, this is also, I think, the third album now where you've worked with Howard Benson. He does such an amazing job with bands. What do you feel that he brings to your music, and why is he a producer that you keep going back to work with?
There's so many different reasons why we work with Howard. He's a really, really, really nice dude, really cool guy that has exactly what you mentioned, all this experience. But the cool thing with him is that he's worked with so many different genres. He's done anything from Motorhead to pop acts and everything. So he knows each and every direction you wanna explore things, right? But he also has a great focus and a great team. He has the Mike Plotnikov that I work mostly with. He's just a phenomenal guy that's been recorded everything from Van Halen to Aerosmith to Kiss to In Flames. It's they're so experienced. That's just one aspect of it. The environment is really nice, super relaxed. We try to be very focused when we're in the studio. We work between 4 and 6 hours in the studio, which keeps the energy up for going back to the house and continue writing. And that's what I mean with the whole process of songwriting just turning into recording at some point without even thinking about it. So it's like everything just works out fine. Howard is he's a good listener to music. He can tell when you're trying to take the easy way out, or he wants you to be extremely focused all the time and do what is in Flames. He has a good grasp of who we are as musicians. He rarely touches the songwriting or the riffing or anything. It's more about arranging or getting, emphasis on like making the choruses the right size, or changing something that could have been a bridge before now turns into a chorus because the hook is right there, or something like that. Small things that you don't think about. Little pushes in the right direction. It's a great filter for getting rid of shit that you won't keep in the song anyways, and you better cut it off early, and all that stuff. So it's just a great person to work with lots of experience and a great team.
Definitely. Bjorn, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly, but there was just a couple of quick questions I wanted to ask before I go. First of all, you've mentioned how much you love playing live. Is there any chance that we might see In Flames in Australia in the next couple of years at all?
Absolutely. We're coming down on the Knotfest shows now in, is it March, I think?
Awesome.
So we're doing a few shows. Yeah, we're so looking forward to it too. We were, right before the pandemic, we flew to New Zealand for a show, and then we had a bunch of shows in Australia lined up. But then pandemic hit and everything closed down, so we went there for a lunch basically, and then flew all the way back home to Sweden again. That was a long way for a lunch.
Yep.
But it was almost Australia. And we've been there a bunch of times, and we just missed it so much. And we're really happy to go there. Pandemic came in the way, and now we're finally back on tour again, and we're hitting Australia very, very soon, and I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. And to finish off, what would you like to say to all of our listeners out there who are about to go out and grab a copy of your album in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, grab the album, get familiar with it, and come to the shows and check us out, because I think live is really, really where you should enjoy. First of all, music, but us in particular, I think. And thanks for all the support throughout the years, and we can't wait to get back there.